The majestic rhinoceros. Its horn, long a status symbol in Asia, more valuable than gold because of its mythical medicinal value. High demand continues to fuel illegal poaching, today taking the animal to the brink of extinction. In a race against time, scientists are working on a lab-based rhino horn alternative.
We want to basically preserve traditions and animals.
Will it pass as real? Will it satisfy the demand? Will it help save the species? This is TechKnow, a show about innovations that can change lives.
Genetically modified food.
We're going to explore the intersection of hardware and humanity, and we're doing it in a unique way. This is a show about science by scientists. TechKnow investigates faux rhino horn. Hey guys, welcome to TechKnow. Joining me today, Costa Gramatis and Marita Davison. Now, in this episode, we're talking about a very unique but very controversial new effort to save the rhinos. And of course, it's trying to save them from that illegal horn trade that is just decimating their populations.
Yeah, that trade is completely devastating rhinos. But this story starts with a company that's based in San Francisco, and they are literally cultivating rhino horn in the lab, fake rhino horn, that they're aiming for it to be completely indistinguishable from the real thing.
So they're trying to flood the market with the fake stuff and kill the demand for the genuine rhino horn.
You know, what I find fascinating about this is the opposition to it is actually coming from, of all people, environmentalists themselves.
And the reason is that this is a really, really controversial topic. And to understand why it's so controversial, we first need to start with the context of why rhinos are in this position to begin with.
Let's take a look.
Modern-day Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam, is a city of contrasts. It's where consumerism meets communism, and where Western tastes mingle with ancient traditions. Like this one, the mistaken use of rhino horn for medicine. This horrifying practice is usually conducted in the shadows of the black market.
This is a very valuable product. You know, it sells for more than the value of gold by weight in Vietnam.
The result, this. The demand for rhino horn has poached the species to the brink of extinction.
Her face is essentially hacked off.
So why in the 21st century are ancient myths still continuing to threaten an entire species? It started with an ancient misguided belief that horns cure disease. But today, it's much more than that. In some Asian cultures, acquiring a rhino horn is a status symbol, especially in Vietnam, where there's more new wealth and more use of rhino. Here, it isn't just used the way the previous generations did. This group of friends mixing it with their drinks during a night of partying.
Uống cái sừng tê giác này thì có thể là đủ khi uống, các anh uống rất là nhiều nhưng mà không có cảm giác là say.
A recent report by Traffic, a wildlife trade monitoring group, suggested the use of rhino horn amongst wealthy urban Vietnamese men is now one of the major drivers of rhino poaching. With demand high, prices are soaring. This man told us he could afford the habit. Traditions don't die here. They take on new forms.
Kiếm sừng tê ở Việt Nam rất dễ, thậm chí bây giờ có thể đi mua ngay lập tức. Thế nhưng mà thật giả thì không dám chắc.
Rhino horn is illegal in Vietnam, but TechKnow arranged a rare on-camera interview with this former user.
Thế thì phải nói cái xuất xứ, tức là bạn anh có cái sừng tê và đã từng mài và chữa bệnh cho cũng bố của bạn, mẹ của bạn anh, và cụ đang là từ một người gọi là không đi được do bệnh thần kinh ấy, yếu thần kinh ấy, thì sau khi dùng sừng tê trong khoảng 1 tuần thì cụ đi được. Còn
He told TechKnow that he used it to treat an illness that left scores of lumps on his arms, but quit after 2 years when it failed to produce results. Sadly, the facts do not support a single health claim surrounding the horns. In fact, rhino horn is made mostly of keratin, the same protein found in human finger and toenails.
Our mission is basically to end poaching through the synthesis of basically artificial rhino horn.
One of the latest and most controversial strategies to stop the use of rhino comes from a tech startup in San Francisco called Pembient. George Bonacy is an analytical chemist and one of the co-founders of Pembient. They say they want to disrupt the illegal rhino horn trade by flooding it with an alternative.
I know that what you're aiming for is what's called a bio-identical product.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It basically means that you would not be able to tell by any analytical chemistry method or DNA method or anything like that, whether it's wild or whether it was cultured or made in a lab.
He walked me through some of the initial steps it takes to reverse engineer rhino horn. The first step is to produce keratin.
Everything has to be sterile, so we'll put some gloves
All
on.
right.
You don't want any of your DNA getting in there, or who knows what'll happen.
So what do you have in this box here?
So these are a lot of gene candidates. This came from this giant database of the entire genome for a white rhino. And now we're going through and trying to eliminate this gene codes for hair, this one codes for fingernails, this one codes for maybe a rhino horn keratin.
It's been a process of trial and error, but Bonacy says he's identified the gene believed to be responsible for rhino horn keratin. As the process continues, the gene is inserted into bioengineered yeast.
Once you get your strain of yeast that has these rhino genes or basically has these instructions to turn sugar into the certain protein, then you can take that yeast and you can ferment it just like beer in giant vats or basically little bottles.
So you're brewing rhino horn.
Exactly, yes.
That rhinokeratin protein is combined with other elements found in rhino horn, like zinc and nickel, in a powder.
So we started with this powder, and then we said, like, well, we'd like to go further than the powder because people want full horns. That's kind of a marker of authenticity.
Matthew Marcus is the CEO of Pembient. He says that by using 3D printing techniques, the company plans to manufacture rhino horns that eventually will pass as the real deal.
On TechKnow, we've covered the illegal wildlife trade extensively. In fact, I got to even hold a rhino horn. Let me show you a picture here. So that's a fairly large rhino horn. Are you saying that your product will eventually look exactly like that?
Yes, that's what we're aiming for. We want to build something that is macroscopically, microscopically, and molecularly the same as a rhinoceros horn.
And by flooding the market with its biofabricated horns, Pembient has lofty goals, suggesting the prices for rhino horn will drop dramatically, reducing or even putting an end to poaching.
And when the price, gets below a certain level, there really is no more incentive for people to go out into the field and actually poach these animals because it's an arduous process, and it's also one that they're risking their freedom and their life to do.
It's a provocative idea that has drawn criticism from many on the front lines of conservation. They view Pembient and other companies seeking to biofabricate wildlife products with suspicion.
They're trying to do it to make money, and I think that's their primary goal.
John Baker is managing director of WildAid, an environmental group that works to convince consumers to stop using endangered wildlife products.
You can change people's attitudes, especially in a country like Vietnam where so many of the people are young. What we don't want to do is now give the young people a reason to start using rhino horn because, oh, it's okay to use rhino horn.
But Pembient says it's a matter of economics, and putting more lab-made rhino horn on the market is what will ultimately save the rhino.
We are looking at the whole supply chain of how horns move, from Africa into East Asia, and we want to approach people along that supply chain. Basically, offer our horn as an alternative to a poached horn.
So then, relying on the fact that once it's out in the market, the product might be sold and change hands, as if it were real rhino horn. Is that a part of your plan here?
People may find it ethical. Some people may buy it in the hope of making a profit by reselling it as a wild horn. We think basically we'll be able to create sort of a pricing gradient that sort of devalues the horn over time.
Marcus says it'll be a year to 18 months before they have a product that's ready for market. The question remains, will it work? Coming up next, we head into the lab.
We'll see the results immediately.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Fire it up.
We see if the fake rhino horn can pass as the real thing. Three rhinos are killed a day in South Africa.
The poaching has gotten so bad that the species will be extinct within 5 to 10 years.
For some, it is a goal that combines science and conservation, the biofabrication of one of the most illegal substances in the world.
How will you know when you're there?
Right now, our benchmark is to pass any test that any laboratory you take the horn into would do.
So TechKnow put it to the test, taking a Pembient powder sample to see how closely its current prototype matches up with the real thing.
So here's a little sample we prepared for you. If you to take this and test it spectrographically, it should be identified as rhinoceros horn.
All right. We take the powdered sample for independent analysis at this commercial lab in Seattle, started by a former University of Washington engineering professor. They specialize in materials identification, of everything from biological samples to industrial chemicals and consumer products.
So if someone is going to spend a ton of money on rhino because it's super expensive, they might want to get it tested in this way.
Yes, and this would certainly be a good way to do it.
Dr. Michael Pomfret is the chief materials chemist here.
This is the actual lab.
Okay, Mike, so I have the Pembient sample here that we're going to test against your sample, which is what?
This is a sample of an actual rhino horn from a local museum here, so we'll be able to throw that in the spectrometer as well.
One of the things we are looking for is how closely a protein known as keratin matches up with the Pembient sample. Keratin found in rhino horn is similar to keratin in human hair and fingernails. So, for the sake of science, I sacrifice one of my nails for comparison.
Anywhere is good?
Anywhere is good.
Does it matter how big?
Nope. If you can get a good chunk of the white part, we should be fine.
Just the way I like it. All right.
Now we have all three samples. I'll hand you off to our scientist, Chris. He's an expert in materials identification analysis.
Cool.
First thing, we test the flake of actual rhino horn using XRF to get an atomic profile. The sample is bombarded with X-rays.
I'm going to have you actually prep the samples and put them into the machine.
Very important not to lose your sample.
Yeah.
Rhino horn, right there. And then the sample goes on top?
The sample goes right on top. Now we just need to place it underneath there and center it.
This is the XRF. How is that? How's that?
That's perfect. All right, so I'm going to turn on the X-ray emitter now.
Screen.
We'll see the results immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right, fire it up.
We then compare the results of the rhino horn XRF analysis against the Pembient sample and my fingernail.
All right, the red is my fingernail.
Yep.
The purple is the Pembient sample.
Correct.
And then the green, as before, is the rhino. To my completely untrained eye, I already see some pretty big differences.
We're mainly seeing huge differences in the amount of calcium. It's extremely high in the Pembient sample. And your fingernail and the rhino horn are pretty close to each other.
So what's your takeaway here?
My takeaway would be that the natural hard horn and nail samples are quite similar, and the Pembient sample is similar, but there's very high levels of calcium, which are probably an effect of the growth medium or additives.
So from the pharmaceutical perspective, would you say, by looking at this, that you're just as well suited having powdered fingernail as you are powdered rhino horn?
You might have a tough time getting people to go for that, but yes, I would agree with that.
Next, we use FTIR to determine the molecules present. After seeing high levels of calcium in the XRF analysis of the Pembient sample, what comes next isn't a complete surprise.
The two compounds that show up most strongly are citrate compound and a carbonate compound.
And why would these two minerals be included in the Pembient sample?
They're both used as preservatives. Calcium carbonate is sort of an anti-clumping agent, and calcium citrate keeps the protein preserved in a recognizable form.
But with so much preservative present in the Pembient sample, it's hard to get a good sense of the keratin protein.
What we can do is, because we know there's carbonate and citrate in it, we can actually subtract those peaks out. And that will leave us with, presumably the peaks that are associated with the protein.
What's left is a protein that bears some resemblance to rhino horn keratin. And perhaps more telling, it doesn't look like yeast, which is what was used to make the bioengineered rhino horn.
My take on this is that there is keratin there. It's just a very crude form of it. There's a little more refinement that needs to be done. It might not be there yet, but they're going in the right direction.
According to the final lab report issued to TechKnow, the Pembient sample contained high levels of calcium, attributed to large quantities of preservatives, obviously not found in the real rhino horn. TechKnow reached out to Pembient for comment. They responded that the high levels of calcium were in keeping with real rhino horn and can be dependent on where on the horn the sample is taken from. And while they acknowledged the presence of some preservatives, Pembient stressed that they are, quote, just part of the prototype process and will not be in the horn once we are at the pilot plant scale. Only time will tell if Pembient has cracked the code in creating a horn that is 100% bioidentical to the real thing. And as TechKnow learned, my fingernails are currently still a closer match, begging the question, if taking rhino horn powder is essentially the same as chewing on your fingernails, can users simply be persuaded to just say no? Up next, synthetic rhino horn comes under fire.
I think it's very dangerous, and I encourage them to not introduce a synthetic rhino horn product.
Rhino horn, ground to a powder and used for treating disease, has been a medicinal myth for centuries. Today, it continues to command a greater price on the black market than diamonds, gold, or cocaine, approximately $1,700 an ounce. And it's mainly because of demand from one country, Vietnam. In recent years, rhino horn has seen a resurgence in popularity, especially among the upper class.
It's increased wealth. It's a very expensive product. Also, the more available it is and the more people talk about, the more other people want to have it.
We want to basically preserve traditions and animals. So it's not a zero-sum game where the animal has to die for the tradition or the tradition has to die to save the animal.
But the question is, will users of traditional Chinese medicine accept an alternative, even one made in a high-tech lab?
This is telling you the ingredients, the chemical ingredients of it. For example, keratin.
Keratin. Yvonne Lau is president of Meiwei, an importer and distributor of traditional Chinese medicine. She says even traditional Chinese medicine needs to evolve with the times. Take, for example, her dispensary, a gleaming modern version of the kind of medicine shops you see in Chinatowns around the world.
So this is your dispensary.
We have over 400 herbs in here, but we also have more exotic herbs, which are like bugs. This is a gecko lizard.
Oh boy.
There you go.
What is this used for?
Well, it's used as a tonic, and it's definitely used a lot for asthma.
She told me that rhino horn was used 2,000 years ago for diseases like epilepsy and meningitis. But its growing reputation as a cure-all today in Vietnam is just plain wrong.
There's no evidence to that at all, that it could do something for cancer. And hangovers especially, I don't even know why someone would try to use it for that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a relatively new phenomenon.
Right. And I guess people, they just want to believe what they want to believe, but there's plenty of other cures for hangover that don't involve killing a magnificent animal like a rhino.
The prospect of having a synthetic alternative, what do you think about that?
Meiwei as a company, we don't sell it, and we wouldn't want to sell it, real or synthetic.
Why not?
Personally, I think it encourages people to look for real stuff, because some people will never believe that a synthetic will work the same as a real thing.
But what if the synthetic could pass as the real thing? That is what Pembient is banking on to drive prices down.
I think it's very dangerous, and I encourage them to not introduce a synthetic rhino horn product. It sort of legitimizes rhino horn right at a time where we're making progress.
Instead, Wild Aid is enlisting celebrities to help get the message out with TV commercials like this one.
Together, we can save our wild rhinos. When the buying stops,
the killing can too.
But in spite of their efforts, each year the numbers of rhinos slaughtered continues to climb. 2015 was the worst year on record, with at least 1,312 of these animals killed.
Đặc biệt người Việt Nam cứ nói cấm trẻ em dưới 16 tuổi, tức là có nghĩa trẻ em phải đi. Nó tìm cách nó đi. Đấy là một cái thực tế ở xứ mình.
But this Vietnamese man says education won't deter users.
Tức là không nên tuyên truyền rằng là sừng tê chỉ có cấu tạo của sừng tê như móng tay với tóc người các thứ. Tại vì cái quan trọng không phải là vấn đề cái chất nền, mà người sử dụng luôn luôn tin tưởng vào một cái chất vi lượng ở trong sừng tê.
And it's the demand of die-hard users that Pembient believes it can satisfy without hurting rhinos.
All these demand reduction campaigns may not necessarily work, and so we're trying to see if we can develop other tools. This is a technological inevitability. It's going to happen no matter what people say. We call it conservation 2.0.
Now, Matthew Marcus of Pembient has called the approach conservation 2.0, referring to the fact that we need to have new, innovative approaches brought to the table. What do you think?
I'm all for innovating, and I'm all for coming up with new ways to solve these problems. I just don't think this is a particularly effective solution. And I think one of the dangers is that we promote this idea that technology is going to save the day, and we take our eye off the ball. It lessens the urgency. The clock's ticking, and we really need to simplify the path to the solution.
For rhinos, the clock is ticking. That may be the only thing that the two sides can agree on. Whether Pembient will succeed in both its biotech and conservation goals is also something only time will tell. At stake, the future of a species.
You know, guys, this story was actually really hard for me. I mean, I'm a conservationist, and I understand how dire the situation is for rhinos, and so this kind of approach that's really innovative, almost disruptive, makes me a little nervous.
Why does this type of approach make you nervous?
Well, to me, the idea of driving down prices by completely swamping the market with a fake alternative, it raises a bunch of questions about, well, are we just going to increase demand? Are we going to find new uses for this product and then potentially drive people to continue to poach or poach even more?
Yeah, this seems less like a science experiment and more like an economics experiment.
Yeah.
And just to see what happens when you mess with that supply. But I will say, the good thing in this is, let's say that experiment goes wrong and they find it increases demand, maybe they could just pull back. Do you have any idea if they'd be willing to do that?
I think they would, and I hope that they would, because one of their main goals is to stop poaching.
One of my big concerns was, how are you going to be able to prosecute, poachers? People are trading the real rhino horn. If we have this market flooded with the fake stuff, how are you going to be able to distinguish?
So you have to think about it this way. This is such a complex scenario that we have here, right? We're talking about international syndicates. The supply chain is infinitely complex, and law enforcement is already overburdened at every step of that supply chain. So Pembient's solution, at least what they're proposing, is to insert what they're calling a genetic watermark into the product, whereby only law enforcement would be able to scan a product and be able to know what what that watermark looked like.
I think that is a very idealistic solution to it. I mean, if you look at poaching in general, corruption is at every level. That secret's going to get out. Somebody else is going to figure it out, and then it can really mess with that supply that's out there. This really is another reminder that when it comes to our environmental challenges, one size does not fit all. So we're going to have to keep our eye on this one and see how it goes. Thanks for watching this episode of TechKnow. We'll see you next time. Dive deep into these stories and go behind the scenes at aljazeera.com/techknow. Follow our expert contributors on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and more.